you've described this perfectly as kind of two general strategies for integrating somebody into a new role. Can you dive into this? Because it was brilliant when you described this to me the first time, just to the two paths.
Well, it's the interesting part that I had kind of found out basically through trial and error, right? These are my own lessons learned, is that when we were trying to bring somebody on and there were systems and there were processes to follow or checklists to follow, with basically limited industry knowledge, even, if they weren't coming from another company, they were, or another contractor, they were coming either from another industry or coming right out of college or right out of somewhere that didn't have a lot of industry knowledge. Interestingly enough, we looked at it as, training a person and trying to get all of the things they need to know in a reasonable amount of time is really no more than, here on the right side of the screen, is that critical path or that phased training, right? Where we would just line out, here's 12 weeks, and here's what those 12 weeks are going to look like. In week one, depending on what week they started, if they started in the middle of the month, we might start with pay estimates. If they started at, the first of the month, we might start with, cost reports and projections because we were ending the prior month. But we would have a detailed 12-week schedule as to here's what this person's going to learn, who they're going to learn it from, what day they're going to work with them. And it would be, here's their learning phase. They would learn it for a day or two or three or a week. And then they would do the work the next week. And then they would become responsible for that work in, the third week or the third day or at the end of 3 months. So it was very measured. It was we need to make sure they understand the process. We need to make sure they understand the procedure. We need to make sure they get the lingo, that they understand who they're collaborating with and all those things. And it worked very well for that connection from kind of outside the industry into the industry, or even into a role that they knew absolutely nothing about. The other side we found, I was actually trying to prepare a couple of people to take over my role so I could go do other things. And one of the guys that I was training we literally put him in the office right next to me. And I'll date myself here. This was the day of not as many emails, right? But there was still the physical, inbox where stuff still showed up in the mail. And this is a guy who I'd been working with for, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So knew the company, knew the lingo, knew the people, knew the work, right, that he was doing, didn't know my level of it, but had seen some of it coming through. So in this case, the fastest way to do it was going to be go basically full immersion on him. And what it was, again, he sat right next to me. Literally in my inbox, I put caution tape over the top and a note that said, everything goes next door. Nothing goes in this box. And then we had regular check-in meetings. So for a while, it was every day. He brought in the stack and we would just go through the stack. And some stuff, he would go, I have never, ever seen this before. Other things, he goes, okay, I've seen this. I think I know what to do with it. By the time you get to week 2 or week 3, instead of the big stack coming in, that's everything because he'd never seen it before, the stack started to even out, where now it was never seen this before, because some of these things took a year because they only happened once a year. So some things, it's like, I still have not seen this. So that stack was getting a little smaller. There was the, I think I know what to do with this, but let's go through it again. And then there was the third stack of, I've handled this. Can you do some quality assurance on it and make sure that I didn't miss a beat, or that, that any risk is mitigated over here? And so over time, the big, I don't know what in the heck I'm doing with this pile got down to just a few sheets of paper every few weeks. And the stack of the quality assurance pile was really very, very big, because that just the regular full immersion of doing this. But this was somebody who had quite a bit of knowledge, just didn't know where to take that knowledge to the next level, and who some of those connections were and how to connect that to the next higher level of of the process, or the next higher level of a person for approval. So we had two very different people and very different knowledge bases, and which one was going to work the best. But they were both very intentional. They were both very, monitored in a way. But the person had a safety net, and the person saw everything and heard the phone calls and saw the work and was responsible for the work. And it just made it that much better. So going through that whole emerging piece, they moved through it much quicker because we had set up a system that said, either here's exactly what you do, or here's the pile you need to get through. And again, a little higher level, determine what you need help with and what you don't. So those were kind of the two phases that I had used that seemed to work out really well. It's just picking one and being responsible for it, monitoring it, and really making sure that we're watching the progress.
And I love, like, on the full immersion one, when you described your process, because I'm like, full immersion. Well, that seems like that's what every single company does. They take you out in a helicopter and they drop you in the ocean, and it looks like the picture with the sharks coming. So, and you're like, no, 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 no. There was structure to it. So having it just broken down into that, it makes so much sense. It's like the things that I handled that were just I'm 100% confident in, and maybe you run quality assurance on that, and then things that I handled, but I really want to talk through it with you. I'm 90% confident that it was not a one-way door type of decision. It's an easily reversible decision or task or something if I made the wrong decision, and then things I want to talk through, which to me is the category of I I believe I know what I should do, but I'm uncertain enough that I don't want to do it before talking through it with you. But in that I'm bringing it, and then there's the like, nope,
Yep.
I don't even know the questions to ask. I don't know. And so we've used this now with lots of different roles and successfully in it, and it was brilliant that you had it full immersion so that I feel the full weight of the role immediately, and yet with a really clear safety net. And that way you're accountable for me getting this thing done. And so you're definitely, I'm still getting it done, but I'm feeling the full weight of the responsibility from day
Right.
one, versus the critical path where we're kind of phasing in me taking the responsibility. And I think you said something in there that I don't want to let go. Like you, and I think I get this right. You divide it for a particular task where it's a responsibility, like, I don't know, doing the billings or whatever. There's a phase in there where you're training me, and then
Hmm.
there's a phase where I'm doing the work and you're watching me do the work, essentially, maybe for a month or two. And then now you've kind of certified now that I've got it. So the training was to teach me what to do. You're observing me, which is kind of a coaching certification phase, to where you're giving me like, oh no, this might be a little bit faster. This might be a little bit, no, don't do this. And then there's here, you've got it. Now it's fully your responsibility, and you fall back to the normal manager. Did I get that about right?
Yes, yeah, you did. And I guess one thing to note, and I tell people this all the time, uh, because we've seen a lot of people that are. Let me talk for a second about the people that are producing the critical path training, right? The one that is literally sitting with the newbie. That person, the reason they normally don't do the phased critical path training is because that newbie is literally glued to your hip, because they can't do anything. They don't know anything. They have to learn this line by line by line. I tell people all the time, it's okay for the first couple of weeks to have that newbie come in at 9 o'clock and go home at 3 o'clock, because you can't get your work done if they are glued to you from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Make sure they know that's not their regular their regular schedule, right? They're going to get back to 10 or 12-hour days, but making sure that the person doing the training has this thing set up enough that they can continue to be working responsibly and not just causing other issues by trying to push this critical path too fast, too early, right? Make sure you're flexible enough to get the training done, still get your work done. And the new person can take on a lot more responsibility a lot faster if you can give them that focused training for a smaller number of hours a day in those first few weeks, suddenly they are pretty proficient in something fairly
Right.
quickly, and now they're taking all of that off your plate, and now you can go back to figuring out what that next step is.
So that's so to get past the emerging phase as quick as possible. This is
Mhm.
part one of that. And part two of it is